Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Myers. I'm the Growers Program Manager with Fringe Coffee. This is Coffee Dialogue episode number 15. And our topic today is the importance of farm bureaus. Our two speakers today are Hannah Gbeh from the San Diego Farm Bureau. She's the Executive Director. And then second, we have Brent Burchett, who is the Executive Director of the San Luis Obispo Farm Bureau. So thank you for your attendance. We'll have questions at the end, and we'll turn it over to Hannah for her presentation now.
Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Gbeh. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego County Farm Bureau. I'm also the administrator for the San Diego Region Irrigated Lands Group. I'm gonna start today by providing a little bit of information about the Farm Bureau, myself, some background information on San Diego agriculture, and then I'm gonna run through a list of real life considerations that you wanna consider when you're interested in farming in San Diego County. So I'm personally, me and many of my peers in the Farm Bureau are passionate about local agriculture and, maintaining agriculture in the state of California, because quite frankly, no other industry in the world provides the socioeconomic benefits that the farming community does. Agriculture feeds humanity. We purify the air you breathe. Agriculture sequesters carbon. Agriculture is aesthetically pleasing. Agriculture provides economic benefits, and it's a crucial component for a vibrant, healthy community. So really the space that the Farm Bureau holds is to ensure that our government entities encourage agriculture, they permit agriculture, and they allow us to expand agriculture. The San Diego County Farm Bureau exists to help our local producers gain and maintain economic viability in their farming operations. And I want to personally thank all the coffee growers, because I would not be able to do my job without my coffee every day. Our Farm Bureau, the San Diego County Farm Bureau, we're a nonprofit organization. We're supported solely by about 1,600 dues-paying members. There are 53 county farm bureaus in California. San Diego County Farm Bureau is a member of the California Farm Bureau, which is a member of the American Farm Bureau. So we are a national network. San Diego County Farm Bureau, we were established in 1914. And I'm just going to show you some pictures of beautiful San Diego agriculture as we go through my talk, because I always find it's nice to look at the agricultural operations as you hear about them. So we were established in 1914 to serve the needs of the agricultural community. And since 1914, we've been active and engaged in helping shape public policy that affects the agricultural community. So, in addition to being the Executive Director of the San Diego County Farm Bureau and also managing the Irrigated Lands Group, I am a small first-generation family farmer myself. I farmed in Jamul, San Diego County, and Valley Center in San Diego County, and now I own a 3-acre cut flower and eucalyptus farm in Bonsall. I have managed the Rancho San Diego Farmers Market for 3 years in the past. Farm Bureau in San Diego County, we currently manage the City Heights Farmers Market. And education-wise, I hold a degree in environmental science from the University of Michigan and a minor in global climate change. So, the last 2 decades of my career is focused on environmental policy and environmental impact analysis with land use development. So, many of us venturing into the agricultural world have a high priority to preserving and sustaining our environment in a friendly way. And so, as a professional environmental scientist, I ventured into the agricultural world because I'm really passionate about the need to feed humanity and also the need to solve the climate crisis, which quite frankly can be done by the agricultural industry by growing it and expanding it both in a conventional and a non-conventional way. So, it's quite easy for me to act as the cheerleader for San Diego's agricultural industry, because our farming community in this county is arguably one of the most sustainable in the world, in addition to being incredibly resourceful and adaptive under a really extreme urban agricultural interface. San Diego farmers, we're known for doing more with less. We grow the highest value crops. We use in minimal water and minimal inputs. We regularly shift our product to meet the current demand. And you can see that by, we're a specialty crop county. And that means we focus on kind of untraditional commodities like coffee or hemp dragon fruit, cherimoyas, guavas. Our farms are really using innovative equipment, better seeds, green energy, and climate smart practices down here in San Diego. So beyond the statistics, which I'm going to jump into a little bit more, our farming community is just really a wonderful culture to be part of. When you're in the agricultural world, you're given a different perspective on life. You get to watch that seed get into the ground, manifest itself, grow fully, and give you a product at the end part. And in an age of technological revolution, this is really a perspective on life that we miss oftentimes. So it's really important, the space we hold at the Farm Bureau is to help educate consumers about the importance of ensuring agriculture remains economically viable. Because if we cannot have farms that are able to pay their bills and continue actually farming, we're going to be in a massive food security issue, but also a massive, a worse climate change issue than we already currently are in. So, I don't want to sugarcoat it too much. It is not easy to be a farmer in San Diego County, but the space that the Farm Bureau holds is to help you through this process. So before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the local, regulatory framework and what you need to look into when you start a farm in San Diego County, let me offer some background statistics on our agricultural community. Agriculture in the county of San Diego, it's our 5th largest economic activity. We are ranked 12th in the state in terms of counties with the largest farm economy. And when you go nationally, San Diego County has the 19th largest farm economy in the nation out of over 3,000 counties. This is really significant and very impressive, because normally when you think of San Diego, you don't think of agriculture. We're a $1.8 billion annual economic contribution to our economy. We have over 5,000 farms. We employ approximately 12,000 farm workers. And when you expand the definition to essential workers related to the agricultural industry, we've got about 70,000 individuals in our county. San Diego County is interesting. We have a lot of unique statistics. We are ranked number 1 in the nation in terms of part-time farmers. We've got over 230,000 acres of production agriculture in the county of San Diego. Our commodity with the highest reported dollar value is ornamental trees and shrubs. The commodity with the greatest amount of planted acreages is avocados. Sorry, this isn't going. There's nearly, we rank first in the nation in number of organic certified growers, and 69% of our farms are between 1 and 9 acres. So we've got the most small farms in the nation, which is really unique. Operating an agricultural business in the county of San Diego is incredibly difficult. We suffer from a high cost of land, a high cost of water, a labor shortage, very extreme anti-agricultural rhetoric coming from our urban areas. And arguably, we have the most complex regulatory environment in the nation. So our current, regulatory environment in the county of San Diego is really prohibiting our farms from doing well. And again, the space that the Farm Bureau holds is lobbying and advocacy to identify where the issues occur and fixing them, real-time solutions to your real-world problems. And so when you join a Farm Bureau, and let's say the county of San Diego comes to you and says, well, to do this legally, you need to obtain permit A, B, C, and D, or a code compliance officer comes out because a neighbor complained that you have dust on your road. You're able to bring those issues as a Farm Bureau member to us here, and we can look into them and help guide you through, to a path to resolution. And that's really important because San Diego County is kind of the poster child of urban agricultural interface issues. We have the 2nd largest city in the nation, in the state of California, the 8th largest city in the nation, and we have a huge farm economy. And so we see, as the city grows more, our farms are having more challenges, and the Farm Bureau is here to help you sort that out. So in regards to legally farming in the county of San Diego, what is it that you need to take a look at before you start your operations in terms of due diligence? So the first government entity that you need to check in with is agriculture weights and measures. They are incredibly friendly to our local ag community. And these are the regulatory entities who are going to tell you what permits you need and how you can legally sell your products. And it varies widely based on, are we going to sell directly to a restaurant or a coffee shop? Are we going to start a CSA-based model where you pay $25 a month and you get a weekly delivery of your product? Are you going to be producing nursery products that requires a nursery license? Are you going to go through organic certifications? All of these have different permitting processes, and it varies based on your model, and it can be down to a difference in nuances from make sure you label this particular invoice with this specific information to all the way up to we need to come out and verify if you're going to sell your product at a farmer's market. You have to get a certified producer certificate, and you go through the process of getting an inspection and designated people that you can send to that market to connect to your community and do that. So it's very important before you get into the actual sale process that you're aware of what requirements you should hold to legally do that properly. Now, the second entity that you want to check with in terms of the County of San Diego and what you're allowed to do with your farm is called the Planning and Development Services. Now, this is the entity that most often is overlooked by our farmers because we normally think, okay, we are farming, so we deal with the Department of Agriculture and them alone. Not so in the County of San Diego. The Planning and Development Department is incredibly important for you to check in with. And oftentimes this only requires you making sure you know your assessor's parcel number or your address and taking it into the Planning and Development Services Department and verifying that you're allowed to do what you're planning by right, or getting confirmation that you are required to obtain a permit of some sort. And I'll give you some examples of that. Now, this is one of the most important things that you can do to ensure that you have long-term economic viability, because what we've seen time and time again in the County of San Diego is people purchase land or people inherit land and they start their process and they pop up a great, wonderful, beautiful farm and they're making money, and they fail to do due diligence about what my zoning is, what my animal designators are. Did I require a permit, a conditional use permit, a minor use permit? And then a neighbor will be upset. Perhaps there was truck traffic. Perhaps it was somebody parked on the street, and code compliance comes out and they will find every violation under the sun. In that case, if code compliance is called, they're not looking for just one violation, they're doing a comprehensive review, and it can put businesses completely out of business. So it's always in your best interest to do a thorough due diligence at the beginning of your project and make sure you're setting yourself up for success. It's also very important to get it documented in writing versus having a phone call with any county departments. You want to make sure you have a solid paper trail so that in the event that you have a neighbor call and complain, it smells, their animals are too loud, I think they have too many animals, and a code compliance officer comes out, you're able to show them the paperwork. Well, I did this and I checked on it. So I want to go a little deeper here because this is the most complex land use planning aspect of farming in San Diego County. And so, just because you have a farm or somewhere you think would be a farm doesn't mean you're legally allowed to do it. The zoning is important. It's very important. And there's even tools on the website that you can just, on the planning and development website, it's called an initial study planning tool. You can just click in your assessor's parcel number and it will put out probably like a 30-page report, full color graphics of any easements they know, any overlays they know. It'll tell you your zoning. And so there are a lot of allowable by right operations in the County of San Diego, but when you start wanting to do educational activities or agritourism activities, you want to host a wedding, you're going to trigger a major use permit or a minor use permit, a conditional use permit, which triggers the California Environmental Quality Act, which triggers biological surveys and mitigation implementation, traffic studies. Sometimes your costs can get incredibly high. So just keep in mind, again, part of the benefits of being a Farm Bureau member is when you go to the County of San Diego, they're going to throw everything at you. And you're able to come to us and say, is this normal or is this inaccurate? There are a lot of exemptions written into the code for the County of San Diego that unfortunately, their own staff is unaware of. A lot of times, high turnover, junior level staffs. And so the Farm Bureau can hold that space to help you navigate that. Another thing that people often are not familiar with is animal designators. So a lot of times when you're operating, let's say a coffee operation, you might also want to have animals on site for multi-purposes. Let's say you want, to create fuel breaks. And so you decide, I want some goats on my site so that I can make sure I'm reducing my fire hazard. And this is like a win-win operation here. I'm getting manure and compost and I'm getting fuel breaks. Well, oftentimes our farmers fail to check the animal designator overlay on their property. That will tell you how many animals you're allowed to have by right. If you have too many animals and a neighbor complains, the County of San Diego will come out and make you reduce your herd. And this is very, troublesome and heart-wrenching in many cases for people who, consider their livestock as an extension of their family, right? For many different reasons. And so just make sure that before you launch in and pour everything you have into your operation, not only financially, but your heart, your soul, your time, you're doing your due diligence to make sure you understand this regulatory framework of the land use part of San Diego County, because it is complicated and it's complex. And as one example, our grading and clearing ordinance in the County of San Diego is incredibly challenging and difficult to work with. And so oftentimes you might own a parcel of land and you say, this is zoned agriculture, but it's never been agriculture. And I want to now make a 7-acre grove, a 7-acre coffee plantation. So I'm zoned agriculture. I got a cool animal overlay. It allows this many animals. I'm going to take this tractor and I'm going to clear my land and I'm going to take that chaparral out. I'm going to take that non-native grassland out. I'm going to convert grazing land to a row crop. None of that is allowable under the existing County of San Diego grading and clearing permit. And so I say this to kind of put a pin in the concept that common sense does not prevail in our regulatory structure here in the County of San Diego. Not yet. We at the Farm Bureau are in the process of rewriting the entire code. We look forward to the next 2 or 3 years having some of these language removed so that our farmers can expand their operations, so that they can purchase a farm that has a grove, the water's been taken off for 5 years, and they want to clear that grove and replant. Common sense would tell you, yeah, you can do that. The existing code says, no, you can't. That dead grove over 5 years is now non-native grassland and you have to mitigate for that. So again, all of this, you'll never know until you take that property to the Planning and Development Services Department, and they even have an agricultural liaison, and you ask them yourself, and you get it in writing, and you're either going to like the answer or you're going to be deeply confused by the answer. And when you're a Farm Bureau member and you're deeply confused, bring it to us, and we'll help you sort out what you can do. And we also help you brainstorm what are ways that you can do it by right and still meet your end goal while working in this regulatory framework. And then the very last regulatory entity that's incredibly important to make sure you're in compliance with is our Regional Water Quality Control Board. They have a waste discharge requirement. It's a law written that applies to all commercial agriculture that is using irrigation in the region of San Diego. Anybody who has an intention of making $1 off of their farming operation is required to comply with this law. Anybody who files a Schedule F on your tax return is required to comply with this law. And if you don't comply with this law and they fine you because they are out to find people not in compliance, they could fine you up to $1,000 a day. And so complying with the law is not that complicated. It's actually, thankfully at the moment, pretty straightforward. You could try to do it directly with the Regional Water Quality Control Board as an individual farmer, or you can opt into a third-party group. And so the San Diego County Farm Bureau created an irrigated lands group as a benefit solely for our members to help them comply with this. So our irrigated lands group, the San Diego Region Irrigated Lands Group, we have about 1,200 farmers that we help comply. We have a whole online system. It's very easy to fill out quarterly self-inspections, annual self-inspections. As the third-party group with all of our members paying their fair share, we split the cost because we have to do regional water quality control testing, surface, groundwater, bioassessments, annual reporting. And when you opt into a third-party group, we all share that. And the Riverside County Farm Bureau also offers a third-party group that some growers in the region can opt into. And so that's just the third government entity that you want to check into. Lastly, the other thing to check in, make sure that when you're starting a farm, you understand your water source. If you're using a well, that's great. You just want to check and make sure you know your total dissolved solids. Your salinity is sometimes impactive related to growing specific crops. It's high in some areas, so maybe get it tested. If you're on a municipal water supply, you want to make sure you're getting their special agricultural water. It's as easy as making a phone call to your water district and sorting that out. And then the last thing, electricity. Make sure that if you are planning to develop a parcel that has not had electricity or water, that you're able to get that. Do it as part of your due diligence. I've seen farmers drill a well and not be able to get SDG&E to come out to their property because it hasn't been given an address by planning and development services. It's a comprehensive process. And again, part of the benefits of being a Farm Bureau member is we help you navigate that. So thank you for your time today. I wish you all the best of luck of farming in San Diego County. There is no better community to farm in the world. We got the beaches, we got the ag, we got everything good. I mean, Brent is our second best place to farm. So, and our second best Farm Bureau, second to San Diego. And that's all I have. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Hannah. That was a wonderful presentation. And now we will hear from Brent. If you do have questions, we can type them into the chat and save them for after Brent is complete with his presentation. So without further ado, please take it away, Brent.
Man, I hate to follow Hannah. That was very well said and done, and a testament to their Farm Bureau. And I learn a lot just from hearing my fellow county managers. And San Diego is one of the better ones, I will say. SLO County just got County Farm Bureau of the Year. We weren't in the same category, I don't think, as San Diego County, but happy to be with you. Can you all see my slides okay? Someone just give me a yes or
yes.
no. Okay, I'm gonna go to the slideshow here. Okay, still good?
Yes.
Hopefully, yeah. Okay, sorry, thank you. Thanks for putting this together today. We're happy to hear the exciting things that are happening with coffee production here. I've heard a little bit about it. I know we've got some plantings here in San Luis Obispo County, but a really emerging opportunity. Anytime we can look at new crops and diversify our county's portfolio of commodities, that's a big deal. So we're happy and want to be a part of making sure this works here. All right, my contact information is below. My name is Brent Burchett. I'm the Executive Director of the San Luis Obispo County Farm Bureau. I'm not a California native. You couldn't tell from my country accent. I'm from Kentucky. I moved here about 3 years ago with my wife. Her family ranches in northern part of San Luis Obispo County. We're going to talk about some stuff that Hannah has covered well, and I'll breeze past that, but who we are, what do we do, why do we exist, then kind of look at some unique SLO County situations and what makes our agriculture industry so special here. So we are a 501c5 nonprofit, which means we're not like a charitable organization, but we are a nonprofit. So we have all the challenges of a small nonprofit. It's just me and one other staff here in our office. But we've been around a long time. So this year is a special year for us. This will be SLO County Farm Bureau's 100th anniversary. Kind of a cool way to commemorate all the things that have happened in the last 100 years in San Luis Obispo County. As Hannah mentioned, well, we're a dues organization. So if you're in SLO County listening, I hope you'll join. We've got a lot of resources. The challenge with Farm Bureau is, you benefit whether you join or not in a lot of senses. The advocacy work we do for you at the local, state, and federal level benefits you whether you pay me a membership dues or not. But there are a lot of other special services and that contact when someone calls me, I'm always happy to help, but want to make sure that, we're keeping our doors open. So if you're not a member of Farm Bureau, I would highly encourage you to do that. And we mentioned we were the County Farm Bureau of the Year for our division, so it's pretty exciting last year. Hope we get that again. Our job is to support the people who make up our local ag economy. That's my day-to-day job is lobbying and advocacy and connecting my farmers and ranchers and ag businesses with elected officials and regulators, making sure that conversation is two-way, that we're making sure that our voices are heard. We're realizing what's happening at the county level, especially, and our partners at California Farm Bureau and American Farm Bureau. And Hannah may have mentioned this, but California Farm Bureau is unique in that it actually has 2 or 3 dedicated full-time federal policy staff. So some of them are based in California, but they concentrate on DC issues, and that's important for, what a huge agriculture industry California has. We're #1 in the nation, so we have a special leadership role there. We work on a lot of kind of things that are not policy related, which would be grants, things with the Farm Service Agency. So if you're new to agriculture, the USDA is your friend on a lot of opportunities to implement new practices. It may be costly to implement. They have cost share programs through the state. The Healthy Soils program is one that's very popular in our area. A lot of water conservation things. The University of California Cooperative Extension Service, they have experts that will help you identify pests on your farm, look at ways to improve your water efficiency. And that's something that's really unique about American agriculture. I'm kind of an ag history nerd, but one of the big reasons why we're such a world leader in agriculture in this country is because we make public investments through the land grant university system. So UC Davis is the one in California, and our network of extension. So the idea is that you take agriculture research at the university level, hire people that go out into the field and implement that and learn from what's actually happening in the field. So it's not just academic. And here in San Luis Obispo, a lot of you may be Cal Poly alums. So we have extra special resources here just from California Polytechnic University. We also have things that are kind of boring, and I won't go into too much today, but labor compliance. Even the best farm and ranch, if you're employing more than a couple of people, you're going to have a lot of challenges with, #1, understanding labor code and regulations that change, especially during COVID, nearly every month. And it's a testament to our farmers and ranchers. They can figure all this stuff out. If you look at labor law posters, they expand half of the walls in a lot of these farming operations just to understand it. But it's important. We know we have high standards in California. That's something we take pride in, but makes it a challenge to know what's going on. Something we don't talk enough about is what's the future of SLO County agriculture? What's the future of California agriculture? We have an aging farmer population. We need new people in agriculture. We know that getting kids excited about whether it starts at the elementary school level, and I know San Diego County does this too, but a lot of our farm bureaus are leading the charge to make sure that agriculture is a part of our curriculum at all levels of education, and especially when those high school kids, FFA, Future Farmers of America students, and 4-H, that they understand what the opportunities are for agriculture. This is not just cows and plows and kind of the old mentality of farming, but really some exciting things. And agriculture is an increasingly technological driven industry. And I know that's just going to continue to accelerate. I really like that Hannah also said this. Food security is a national security issue. And I've been doing research for our SLO County Farm Bureau's 100th anniversary. The actual impetus here in California was wartime preparations to make sure that we had enough American grown food to support our domestic population, but also to send food to our troops abroad. And I think we've lost sight of that. We've had years. It's a good thing of plentiful food, but there's countries in this world that food security is the thing that keeps them in power. So look at other countries, China, for example. If they can't feed their population, it takes away the authority of the government. That takes away their ability to support their citizens. So I wish we would think more of agriculture, especially domestic agriculture, as a national security issue. We're a world leader in agriculture, as you all know, and farming and ranching is tough. My family farms in Kentucky. It's hard there too, but my goodness, California does not make it easy. And sometimes I feel like a lot of people hate farmers here. They don't really want to take the time to understand what's going on. And that's job security for Farm Bureau. That's what we're here for. We amplify the voice of agriculture. We bring all commodities together. There is plenty of awesome agriculture organizations specific to commodities in San Luis Obispo County. You've got Central Coast Greenhouse Growers Association, Grower Shippers Association, Cattlemen's Association, Cattle Women's, floral groups. All these are great and do very specific things, but there's so few of us in agriculture, then we've got to stick together. You see that statistic down there. Early on in our country's history, we were all raising crops and livestock. That's how you survive. That was what kept us all alive. But fortunately, we've been able to produce enough food that everyone doesn't have to work in agriculture full time. So it's about 2% of the population that's in the production of food commodities. But if you extend that to all the restaurants and food services and the transportation networks, about 10% of all U.S. jobs are connected to agriculture. If you're not already following us, get on that Instagram and at Slow Farm Bureau, also on Facebook. I do a weekly email newsletter. It's pretty good. Hannah's is pretty good as well. I steal stuff from her newsletter. It's a weekly, this is free resource. I hope you will be a member, but we don't require that for you to get on that email list. So that's every Friday, a lot of local and regional agriculture news. So we heard about where San Diego was on this list, and they were on this list, they're number 12. I believe this was from about 4 years ago, this information. SLO County is about 15th. If you look at the value of total agriculture production, that dollar value, that's how we rank. And really, if you're a top county in California, you're a national leader. And I mentioned that as well. So for those who don't know, here we are in San Luis Obispo County on the beautiful central coast of California. Every county has an annual crop report, and it's a really good thing. It helps put context in the changes that we see every year. And so this 2020 crop report was actually wasn't published until 2021. So sometimes we're lagging on what we're seeing today in the market. These are our top 10 crops in terms of, or commodities, I should say, in terms of dollar value. SLO County is neat in that we've got this mix of coastal agriculture that we'll look at, will probably be of interest to coffee growers. We also have got kind of that old cowboy culture. We've got big farms, big ranches out in the inland part of our county that really a part of our heritage, and that defines why we're unique and why this is a great place to live. But if you take anything away from this, I want it to be that diversity of commodities is important. Whenever the wine grape market goes down one year, or the avocado market is hit with some kind of deal, some kind of issue, could be an outbreak of something, could be the commodity production itself is down, but usually we see that on the market side. That's what drives a lot of these dollar values to decline. The strength of our industry here is the diversity of commodities. We've got a lot of things you probably never heard of. I think one of our greenhouses is the largest leek transplant provider in the nation. We have a lot of flower seed. So when you go to Lowe's and Home Depot and those little packets of flower seed, I know y'all do a lot of that in San Diego County as well, but things that can't be done anywhere else in the world. And Hannah mentioned this, but California, I don't know what the statistic is. We grow 90% of like the top 18 commodities in terms of your fruits and vegetables and things that aren't grown, maybe a little bit in Florida, but California ag is where it's at, especially on specialty crops. If you've been in San Luis County, you've probably been hugging this coastal area here because it's beautiful and it's a big part of our tourism industry. We have a lot of agriculture there. Really, we're you think of us as the Santa Maria Valley. So Santa Maria, a lot of strawberries, a lot of vegetable production that bleeds over in the southern part of San Luis Obispo County. Have a real neat avocado industry that's risen in recent years. So I think we're the number 3 grower of avocados in California, which means, for those who don't know, U.S. avocado production is almost entirely in California. I don't think any other states do it. And we know the value of that. A couple weeks ago, we had the ban on Mexican avocados imports. And that was real concerning to the market because we were afraid a lot of that would result in a market disruption. People thought maybe it would help farmers, that we were only having, U.S. avocados. But the reality is that supply chain, think of your Subways, your big, retailers. If there's not a consistent supply of commodities, they'll just pull those from the shelves and they'll change recipes and that sort of thing. So we live in an international market. We know we have to be competitive. We know there's pluses and minuses on trade and who benefits and who doesn't. But in general, farmers support free trade. And on the other hand, we also value local agriculture production. It's that blend of the two that really makes it special. Our office is by the airport. I should probably close my window. I hear a jet taking off behind me, but there gives you the mix of crops. And really, it's that all other crops category that I think helps us weather a lot of these market disruptions. I looked at this picture and I don't know if that's actually in San Luis County. I've never seen our water quite that blue. So that may have been a stock photo. I forgot. Apologies for that. SLO County is beautiful though, for sure. We do have mountains and that kind of coastal climate. You all know this, the proximity to ocean topography dictates our microclimates, but we can have, a 40-degree temperature swing in a given day across this county. It's really unique and what makes the challenge for agriculture. So we never have one size fits all. It may rain in one part of the county and not in the other. We have different commodities that reflect the different local weather conditions. A weather condition that is bad, and I don't know if it's ever going to get any better, but we're in, I'm going to call it a perpetual drought. And it seems like we've been in this thing since I got here, and it's no joke. It is scary how this is the new norm. And key takeaway for San Luis Obispo County is we are entirely groundwater dependent. So we only have groundwater for our agriculture. We have some, municipalities that get state water, but we're entirely dependent on groundwater, and that's a very precious and increasingly stressed resource. We'll talk more about that. Here's how we regulate that at the statewide level. Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. This basically calls for local communities, governments, landowners to come together and figure out how to get their basins in sustainability. So balance that amount that's withdrawn versus what's replenished, hopefully replenished by rain every year. These are very difficult conversations. We're talking about fallowing of land to meet some of these targets. We have lots of issues across our county with, wells going dry. We have obviously the pressure to have more housing and more people here that want to live here, but that puts more strains on our local water supply. So trying to look at we're all approaches possible we want to look at to bring in new water, whether it's infrastructure. And that's a big conversation that California Farm Bureau has and all of our counties do as well. But what does the future of agriculture look like without water? And I would tell you it's a very dark picture. And so if we don't have new water resources, new investments in infrastructure, California ag will suffer for sure. Another piece of water, we talked about water quantity with that Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. Probably just as challenging for us is water quality. So these are regional governments, the Central Coast Regional Water Board. So Hannah talked about the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program in their office, handles that for farmers and ranchers. We work with a group called the Preservation Inc., Central Coast Water Quality Preservation Inc. Great group. That's an enrollment, a third-party group that helps you do your well testing, the really stringent requirements. These are brand new as of this year, and we did a lot of dialogue and engagement on this with several commodity groups. But long story short, this was really going to change the face of agriculture. Think of a field that might have 2 or 3 rotations of lettuce a year. Will now only be able to have 1 because those crops need fertilizer. And you got to know that farmers drink this water too. We're on these ranches. These are our wells. These are our kids out there. But it's a little bit of a challenge meeting some of these targets that may be unrealistic, or the amount of fertilizer that they're thinking should be allowed really could impact our production. And so this is a challenging issue for sure. For the first time, we've got a numeric cap on how much fertilizer you can apply here in the Central Coast. Labor, we all know this. Anybody that's got any kind of employment operation going today, you probably got a help wanted sign out. This has been exacerbated, by COVID and all the challenges we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. But agriculture's had this problem for a while, and it's just amplified during COVID. We've got mandated minimum wage increases, obviously challenging, but other challenges is the change of overtime rules. So in farming, we're dependent on the weather. Those crops can't wait. I can't, change my shift, like at a manufacturing plant. We have to be out there responding to weather conditions that are very dynamic, and, light and the temperature, those affect how crops can be harvested. I'm not sure if that's true for coffee or not, but it makes it difficult to be an employer. And we increasingly rely on a federal guest worker program, the H-2A program, that will bring in workers from other countries, primarily Latin America. And some of these wages are, piecemeal. So if you ever go by a field and you see workers running, while they're picking a crop, they're getting paid by the piece rate. And it amazes me the amount of money they're able to send back home to their families and still, live in the high cost of living here in San Luis Obispo County. And that's not unique to us here, but so we don't know if this problem's going to get any better, but this is something we spend a whole lot of time on at all levels of government. Long term, 50 years from now, what's agriculture going to look like? It'll be mechanized. And there's a technological push because we've not been able to figure out this human capital problem. We could talk all day about immigration and what happens at the federal level. I'm proud of what California Farm Bureau does to elevate the conversation about the need for immigration reform. So the Farm Workforce Modernization Act is something that California Farm Bureau is a champion of that maybe other farm bureaus don't agree on. The politics of immigration are very divisive and challenging, but this is huge. We will not have any crops in America without our farm worker population. So on COVID, we got reminded of that, but the importance of keeping us safe and making changes in the way we do business to make sure we can do the best possible way. We're always going to improve. There's going to be things we need to do differently, but I would argue that the ag employers really appreciate their farm workers and want to make sure they're treating them right and finding a way forward, because this is not going to go away anytime soon. This is a positive one. I'm always talking about stuff that's challenging, but agritourism has been a neat one here that I've worked on quite a bit. We have a local group called the Slow County Farm Trail Map. Farmstead Ed's the organization. They're helping us take our huge tourism industry. So if you've been in San Luis Obispo County, it's probably because you were visiting because you enjoy the weather and the scenery and the cool stuff here. But we need to make sure that we can inject that into our farm economy. It's becoming increasingly difficult for farmers and ranchers to be full-time farmers. They know they have to bring in off-farm income. If you look at, around the world, agritourism is a thing. You try to integrate that in your operation. People want to see where their food comes from. That's a good thing. If there's ways we can do that without impacting food safety, we're growing, a lot of our farmers are growing a crop that never gets washed. It's picked out of the field and it's packed and it goes to a grocery store. So there's always food safety challenges. A lot of times farmers would love to have you at their place, but that can create a food safety risk because there's procedures in place to keep you safe for all of our leafy greens and hugely high food safety standards here in California that are international standards. But agritourism hopefully can be a cool part of our economy. We're trying to do a hip camp ordinance here in San Luis Obispo County. So think of an Airbnb, but for campsites out in rural areas. And if done right, should be a positive thing for our ag community. List goes on, and I was not wanting to go down all the issues, but we could talk about climate change all day. It is not an if, but it's a reality here. It's the new norm. We see that across all parts of our county, the changes of weather and the cycle we're seeing. Wildfire insurance access. This is not just an ag issue, obviously, but a lot of our members can't get property insurance because they're in a new wildfire risk or they've been assessed to be in a new higher level of risk for wildfire. California Farm Bureau, I'll toot their horn. They led a huge effort to expand commercial ag properties. Think of your buildings at your farm. For the first time now, thanks to Farm Bureau, they're eligible for the California FAIR Plan, which is the insurer of last resort. Now, my members are listening to this will say, well, it's still not affordable. It's still 4 times as expensive as it was. And that's absolutely right. It is crazy high expensive, often not worth insuring a lot of these buildings because you can't afford that premium. But a lot of our farms have to have insurance, to get loans to get their crop out that year. This is going to be increasingly challenging for us. And it's not as easy as, passing a law dictating insurance companies do X, Y, Z, because we need a competitive marketplace. And if there can't be some recuperation of that money, we have these huge wildfire losses, there won't be wildfire insurance in California. We fear that, and a big issue for Farm Bureau. Supply chain crisis. I've got members that, before COVID, it was about $5,000 to put a container load full of produce onto a semi and drive it to the East Coast. Now that's about 15 or 20,000. And that was last year when I checked in with them. So just imagine if your shipping costs went from 5,000 to 20,000 per load. Insane. And we don't often have the ability to capture that cost back. I've got a quote for you at the end of my presentation. Hopefully we'll eliminate that. Cost of electricity and unstable electricity. We have a lot of cool stuff going on with electrification in agriculture with electric tractors and other things, but parts of our county are very rural, very remote, and they may not have the ability to implement those. So we're still, I've got an interview this afternoon talking about high fuel prices, how the farmer is especially impacted by that. And we know that's going to be a challenge for a long time. Balancing these environmental goals that we take pride in and we want to implement, but with the realities of how to raise food today and the challenges our farmers face. Encroachment on farmland, urban pressure. Y'all see it in San Diego County. We also have it in SLO County. That could be, taking land out of production because of regulations on water. It could be development, to put in a new housing project. We know we have huge, crazy demand for housing, but also things like conservation easements, people taking land out of production, making it a park or recreation, which has challenges for our local ag community as well. International competition. We're in an international market. I always tell everyone to buy local if you can. We support you, that those dollars help stay here and are reinvested into our local community. But where I come from in Kentucky, we like to eat strawberries this time of year too. We don't have any. So we value this, broader market that you're able to sell other countries and other states, the United States. I will say, I think maybe Hannah mentioned this too. There's this really counterproductive small farm versus large farm. And I hear it a lot from policymakers, and it's unfortunate, but the reality is we need all types of farms. We need that diversity. COVID taught us we need a resilient food chain that has, bigger players and smaller players alike. It's that mix that makes our California ag community so strong. And I hope when people have that discussion, I would say, well, how many acres does it take before you're big? How many employees do you have that makes you too big? Is it, it's arbitrary in my opinion. And there's no perfect farmer or rancher for sure, but I would say in general, the values are the same. When you get a group of farmers together, whether they have 2 acres or 2,000, the challenges are very similar. And I worry that we're having the wrong conversation in our community. But I think we got just one more parting slide here I'll leave you with. A quote many of you heard before: the farmer is the only man in our economy who buys. And today it's woman as well. About 40% of our farms in California are operated by women. We had that National Women's Day earlier this week. We highlighted one of those cool statistics. But the farmer is the only person in our economy who buys everything at retail. Think of your crop inputs, all that stuff, sells everything at wholesale, and pays the freight both ways. We're feeling that today for sure with gasoline prices and diesel fuel. Dwight D. Eisenhower: farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. And with that, I will wrap up and stop sharing my screen. I think that worked. All right, guys.
Thank you, Brent. That was wonderful. All right, so I'm going to go to some of the questions in the box, and I will just read the questions aloud, and then you can just jump in. Whoever wants to go first, or whoever feels like they have a strong answer. If you don't have an answer to them, that's perfectly okay. I'm a big proponent of saying I don't know. It's very important. I like to reward people for that. So Hannah, you mentioned something about green energy. I was wondering, what sort of opportunities do you think that growers in San Diego should be aware of and might pay attention to on the green energy front?
Oh, well, when it comes down to the systemic electrical grid, we really have a lot of interesting projects in the work here in San Diego, from wave power exploration to lithium mining in Salton Sea, becoming the new future. And at our local level, it's all championed through our climate action plan and our decarbonization plan. So in terms of like what can a grower do on a local level, certainly exploring solar right now. SDG&E, I think they just came, I think I just saw a news article that we pay the highest electricity bills in the nation. And so offsetting that with investments in solar is really important. And then it comes down to like small actions you can take as a farmer, right? So setting your pumps up to operate on off-peak hours helps the entire grid, reduce things like that. Making sure you're planning to reduce your usage during the longer hours. It's just kind of thinking outside the box and a little bit more creatively to reduce your actual power consumption. Brent, how about you? What y'all doing up there? You're muted.
There we go. It's kind of loud in the background. I'll try to time it right. Anyway, the Central Coast Community Choice Energy has a specific ag electrification grants, and they have programs, and they're Farm Bureau members. I know they are in Monterey County as well. And I think people are open to that. The challenges are where your farm is located, the nature of your production, but we're absolutely going to see more green tractors. We're going to see more health. We're going to talk about soil here in a minute. I said it's another question, but I think our farmers here are very open to that concept. And the unreliability of the grid, as we've talked about, is a huge thing. If we can't, keep your food refrigerated, if we can't, have power to run our processing plants, that's a challenge to our food, production. That's a threat to our ability to feed our neighbors and communities. So I think California, we're about to lose 10% of our power that was generated, is currently generated by San Luis Obispo County through the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. It's being decommissioned. A lot of people upset about that. A lot of complexities there, but I think California needs to take a serious look at these rolling blackouts. And I explain this to people in my home, and they're blown away by that, and just how this advanced, wealthy state, in many respects, can't figure out how to do electricity right. But it's no easy solutions for sure.
And just to follow up with that, we have grants down here in the county of San Diego as well, related to like upgrading to more energy efficient pump and stuff like that. So good point, Brent.
Where can our growers find learn more about these grants that you referred to? We're pretty good about talking about the Healthy Soils program. We talk about SWEEP and we talk about EQIP. Are there any others that stand out that we might want to look into?
Well, from my perspective, there's an excessive amount of funding out there on the local, federal, and state level related to grants, and they're very fast moving. They open and they close within a few weeks period of time. And so really in San Diego County, if you wanted to tune in and get that information, you would need to be a Farm Bureau member, because then you'll receive our weekly email updates where we identify which grants are open at this point in time. And that's one of the benefits of being a Farm Bureau member.
Well said. I'll mention, I know in our county, we have 2 resource conservation districts, and their job is to help implement Healthy Soils program, for example. A lot of times, if you have an existing relationship, they can say, oh, well, this worked for Hannah's vegetable operation. I think this will also work for her neighbor's other thing. And they can be able to connect like that, things that, good point made of, these are often very short time frames, and you got to do the work up front, and then the money may not come for 2 years. And I know it's a frustration on tight budgets of farmers and ranchers, but that's the nature of a lot of these government programs. And I would argue that sometimes you give this much money appropriated, a lot of organizations skim it off before the farmer gets any of it. And by the time what's left, it's almost too much trouble to implement, I'm afraid, sometimes. But Healthy Soils program is a very positive one. If for people in our area, Central Coast Community Choice Energy has electrification programs. You can just Google them and they'll have all their programs listed.
Well, and then when it comes to, accessing funding for your projects, a lot of small nonprofits offer, or local governments, in my opinion, offer better opportunities than CDFA does. So for example, the Healthy Soils program, I own a farm myself. And so I went through the process of figuring out how much would a reimbursement be to do this. And coupled with the amount of time it takes to do the application and to report out annually, it was not worth my time and effort to do that. I would just rather voluntarily do it. And they have some constraints. So I would caution all growers that if you are going to enter into a grant on a local, a federal, or state government entity, it is imperative to read the fine print, because time and time again, we see that kind of biting farmers in an unwelcome way. Now, other organizations like American Farmland Trust, like the Conservation Fund, like Farmer Veteran Coalition, these are entities that really have popped up that are not part of the government and offer really great grant opportunities or alternative lending opportunities to farmers without the bureaucracy involved. So I just caution everybody that if you're going to get a grant, make sure you're reading that fine print, because you don't want to be conditioned to do something for 5 years if you're not aware that that's what you're signing up for.
Yeah, that's a great point. At Fringe, we got a Healthy Soils grant for close to $100,000 for our corporate headquarters. And I think I'm the one who wrote the grants. And I think some of the people who are implementing it are wanting me to get out there and do it a little bit more. And then also we have a tremendous amount of money for mulch, which is, great. We love mulch and it's very useful, but we could, creatively use that money a little bit more to our farm's advantage if we had a little bit more flexibility as what to do with the money. But yeah, that's a great point. And we'll definitely look into those points. Does either Farm Bureau ever help out with any grant writing services? Because I know that sometimes is a challenge for the growers to write the grants.
We refer them to resource conservation districts. We actually have 2 in our county, and they're very good about getting with farmers and going through the timelines and helping with the paperwork. But and they get paid a portion of that grant money to actually implement and do that stuff.
Yeah. So structurally, a lot of funding is available to entities to help farmers navigate the grant process and things like that. But the farm bureaus, we are not a 501c3, we're a 501c5, which means like I'm a registered lobbyist, and a huge portion of my time is educating my policymakers on how their proposals are going to further kill agriculture. And because I hold that space in lobbying and activism, we at the Farm Bureau are not eligible to hold those grants. So as Brent said, Resource Conservation District is really imperative. The space that we do hold in terms of the world of grant is we offer a lot of letters of support. Because if you are going for a grant, you certainly would, look really, it looks great to have a Farm Bureau, your local Farm Bureau, offer that as part of your application.
Great, thank you. Those were some great answers. The next question I have was just kind of getting an idea of like, what are some of your overarching goals for both bureaus? What's kind of your like mission statement, North Star type of points that your organizations are really striving towards for the future of agriculture in your counties?
Brent, you want to start with that one?
I'll give it a go. I'm sure Hannah's more profound thought, but to be honest with you, every day is kind of an onslaught, and we were just trying to get through our list of meetings. And as you've heard, we're planning a building department on one day, and we are regional water quality boards. We are watching federal stuff to make sure it doesn't impact us locally. Same with the state. Then you got just the normal nonprofit stuff. We're relatively small. We're two here. I know Aunt Hannah's a pretty small office as well. So sometimes I don't step back and think that's a fair question, but I think we're just trying to help our members survive this season, this year. We often get lost in that daily battle because it's people's livelihoods at stake, and we get real emotional thinking about our farmers. And do we have more people coming to agriculture? Maybe in some areas, but in general, we're lower in numbers. We see farmers not being replaced, that next generation, and it frustrates me, but I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can at Farm Bureau to give our farmers and ranchers a chance.
Yes, and I will say I had to pull up my mission statement because that's a great question. The mission of the San Diego County Farm Bureau is to foster San Diego agriculture through education, public relations, and public policy advocacy in order to promote the economic viability, sustainability, and community building of agriculture. So, at the end of the day, farms don't exist unless they're economically viable. Farmers do not have the ability to bleed red and exist still. This is very different than open space, right? People forget that farming is not the same as open space in terms of land use. We have shared similar characteristics, and we're good for the environment, we're aesthetically pleasing. Open space, you set it and you forget it. You don't ever have to touch it. That bush stays there forever, right? Farming is a business. And without a farmer who's making money to pay his bills and provide for his family, there are no farms. And at the end of the day, the survival of humanity is dependent on agriculture. If we don't have food, we all die. And people seem to forget about the concept of photosynthesis, where a plant simply by existing takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and converts it into oxygen. And therefore, on the baseline level, if we don't have air to breathe, we're also all going to die. So as a PER, we also solve climate change, right? By existing. None of this will happen without an economically viable situation. And at the end of the day, in California, our regulatory environment is not built that way right now. What's happening is it's pushing agriculture out of the state, and it's pushing agriculture not only out of the state, but it's creating this crazy demand for imported agriculture that's very cheap and based on slave labor and very dirty environmental growing practices. So the Farm Bureau, the space we hold, is reminding people of the importance of ag, because people seem to have forgotten that the survival of humanity is dependent on agriculture, and also reminding our policymakers that this is not just an industry that can exist for fun. It is a fun industry. It's the best industry in the world to be part of, but you have to pay your bills. We haven't set society up that we can just voluntarily all farm and live in a happy, commune, right? That'd be cool. I'd love that, but it's not how it is. So that's the space the Farm Bureau holds.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Great points there. Yeah. So one of the agricultural people that I look up to and organizations is Wes Jackson, who's the founder of the Land Institute in Salina, Kansas. They do some really great work out there. Wes is also started the first environmental studies department in the United States at Cal State Sacramento, I believe. And one of the things that he says is that, soils are our most important non-renewable resource. It's far more important than oil. It's also our largest export. We are shipping it out to sea with no return on the investment, creating dead zones in our ocean and destroying important biodiversity in our seas. That's not a direct quote. That's just something I patched together from my memory of stuff he said to me. But I'm just curious about, what are your thoughts on soil erosion on behalf of your farm bureaus? What can be done to prevent it? And what are your thoughts about, modern industrial agriculture, monoculture, and our need to develop perennial polycultures that mimic natural ecological ecosystems? Kind of a large question, but I just wanted to hear what were some of your thoughts on that subject matter, top of mind stuff.
I'll give it a start, and Hannah will rescue me, I'm sure. Without a doubt, any sort of farming and ranching has an environmental impact. It is the degree we're talking about, what we can mitigate, what's acceptable. But just at the end of the day, I'll remind people that it is not natural for us to be growing food. This production of agriculture is going to have some sort of disturbance of the soil. It's going to have some use of water. It's going to need some inputs on it. I have kind of a different thought. I come from Kentucky, and there's kind of this misconception in my mind about monoculture, and the soybean and corn guys out there are the ones that pioneered no-till farming, and they have mitigated millions of pounds of soil that would have otherwise went into the waterways. And it is a very real problem. We talk about the Gulf hypoxia zone out there. That's where you get, the sediment's a problem, obviously, but it's the excess nutrients, the nitrates that get in the water that creates an algae bloom. When that algae blooms and dies, as it decays, it's a eutrophication. It takes the oxygen out of the water. And so you see those shrimp and all those critters have to go further and further out in the Gulf of Mexico. And that's a terrible thing. And it's been, I know, decades being worked on, and still will be. I think here in California, at least in our Central Coast region, the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program includes measures for sediment and runoff. So you have to measure the slope of your farm. What's your plan for controlling that? It's it's not just bad for the environment. Farmers need that soil too. It's not something we throw away. We spend gobs of money getting that composted soil and working the soil, making sure it's clean and safe. And it's a huge challenge for us to. We never want to lose topsoil. So I think that's a little bit confusing, I think, to people. But you don't want to lose any topsoil. It's a precious resource that you're never going to get back if it goes out into the ocean. Our diversity of agriculture here, I think, is pretty strong. It's not just good for the environment to have that diversity, but it's good market sense. It's not to have all your eggs in one basket. The challenge is, as we have higher and higher environmental standards, it's kind of a natural process for farmers to specialize. And I think, that's the nature of all business. When you get good at something, you kind of focus on that. But I love the resurgence of this diversified farm. That's the regenerative ag is what we talk about a lot here. And that works differently works better for different crops than others. I don't think it's a term that we should laugh at in farming. The people who've been farming 50 years see a lot of terms come and go, but anybody that says the future of farming will be the same 50 years from now is wrong. I mean, in my lifetime, 37, it's changed dramatically, and it'll continue to do so. And if I ever, go back to the eastern part of the United States, I can talk about what the cool things California's done and those standards that were probably very painful to implement, but are now part of our practices. And there is a balance of having that tension of how can we get better? We don't want to just rest on our laurels, but I would always say that people that have not worked in farming, that have not had to pay their bills, and I always say, I'm going on a soapbox here, but try to feed yourself for a year. If you got this thing figured out with regenerative ag and what your mix of crop is, go out and do it. Prove us that you've got this concept down, because it's hard, and there's not a lot of people in scenarios that can manage all that on one farm. And anyway, that's my thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so Ben, this question's got my blood boiling here. As a professional environmental scientist, I have an alternative perspective. And this is often a comment that comes from my peers in the environmental world. And I believe strongly that we are missing the broad comprehensive picture when we are making statements like this, and it is pushing our industry out of existence and causing a greater environmental impact than needed. So let me drill down a little bit and state that, first off, the San Diego County Farm Bureau and all farm bureaus, we support conventional agriculture and organic agriculture, large scale agriculture, small scale agriculture. There is no bad agriculture. And as a professional environmental scientist, agriculture does not have an environmental impact. At the end of the day, it's the only industry simply by existing that is a benefit to humanity, not only in food production, but in carbon sequestration. If this industry did not exist, we would not exist today. There are much larger problems than agriculture. The plasticity agents that are leaching into your water supply from plastic products or water bottles are killing you more than agriculture. The additives that are in your fuels from cars that are leaching into the groundwater are killing you more than agriculture. The emissions from the tailpipe of vehicle miles traveled of cars, this is what's causing our climate crisis. And what we are doing is finding ourselves in a bubble, an academic bubble. And we're failing to acknowledge that we are so privileged as environmental scientists to even care about the environmental practices. People are starving throughout the world. And here we are living a first world problem of, I want to use a recycled bag. I want to use an organic fertilizer. And we're missing the problem. And at the baseline level, we don't support population control. We want to feed humanity, and this is really important. And so when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions and when we talk about soil, you can grow agriculture in any medium. We are seeing fantastic, really impressive hydroponic growing operations. We are seeing that you can produce food out of straw bales. And so, yes, it is important to ensure that we are taking care of the natural environment because it is only in the best interest of the farmer to do that. We are the natural and very first environmental stewards of the environment because we get a greater harvest when we take care of that. And it is sad and it's offensive that we're being brushed with a broad label of monoculture in California, right? Especially San Diego, where we hold a special space of small farms, diverse farms, women-led farms, minority-owned farms. We're the best of the best. And what's happening is we're applying this label to mostly international slave labor, non-regulated industries. And we're saying, you know, farmers in San Diego, you're the best of the best, but you need to do more. You need to do better. It's not good enough. And that's unfair. And it drives us out of business. So my perspective is we need to acknowledge how good our industry is in California. If there's anything good about a very badly over-regulated system, we've been regulated to the best of the best. And we need to champion that. And we need to say to other parts of the state, look what we're doing. You could do this too. We need to look at international sources and say, we don't want to import slave labor. Look at, I mean, I'm a border town, right? And they're paying farm workers $3 a day, 30 minutes to the south of the border here, right? My farms are offering this is an extension of our family. Okay, we got 401ks, we got scholarships, we're paying high wages, we got healthcare offered because we want to retain this workforce. And so it's hard when we're not viewing this all comprehensively about the betterment of a humanity in the globe, right? Because when we pick on our ag about erosion, and we're the leaders and the best in erosion control, we push us out of business and we're just importing it. The demand for the food, the demand for the products, it doesn't go anywhere. And so we're just kind of putting this greenwashed, surface on it, and then we import it from really horrible sources. So San Diego ag, California ag is the absolute best ag. It's the most environmentally friendly ag. There is no question about it. There might be some in Holland and Netherlands that are pretty cool, but California is right there as the leaders and the best.
Yeah, good points. One of the things that I really like about us producing coffee here in California is it does really kind of bring the challenges of coffee cultivation home to a very vibrant consumer market. California is arguably one of the most sophisticated consumer markets for coffee. And so to have that kind of really direct connection, not just for, green buyers, but for the general public to understand the challenges of growing coffee, and then to realize some of the incredibly low prices that are paid for the production of this crop. I just think it really brings that home a lot closer for the consumer to see the challenges of what it takes to grow coffee, and why paying more is valuable and needed. So to move on, the next question is kind of on like a cap on carbon. I've heard, a lot of energy experts talk about that, we're going to need to start rationing carbon. We can't just rely upon oil and gas, and that, the future is going to be a period in which we're going to need to have some sort of caps or rations on carbon. Now, it's kind of, I would think, political suicide for a congressman or a senator to start telling Americans that they need to drive only one car a couple of days a week, or they can only fly for business purposes, right? No politician is going to get up and say that, even if it's the truth. So what are some of your thoughts on preparing for a potential kind of post-carbon future when it comes to agriculture? And are there organizations that you look to that are doing good work around this, or yeah, just I'm always curious about what happens when we run out of carbon to work with,
Brent, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Sure. So many different thoughts. I don't want to go on too many tangents, but first thing that always pops into my mind is, we have these wildfires, how much carbon is released because our management practice has been so poor for so long, and so much well-intentioned environmental rules that prevent us from having those burnings that would have naturally occurred. People living in houses is not natural, but we recognize that that's important. So we have to manage these things. They're all trade-offs. When I was in my previous position, my family raises soybeans, and I know something we talked about a lot was, how we do here in America are trying to drive those yields up to get more output for a small amount of input. Really has a global impact. Go look at Google Maps and look at that line of soybean farms that meets the Brazilian rainforest. And intensification of American agriculture with our standards and rules is actually one of the better things we can do for the planet, because if not, that market will switch down to other countries, as Hannah talked about, and we know their standards are a lot different. And there's parts of the world that are so critical to our ability to breathe air and these basic things for humanity that, for example, the World Wildlife Fund, I remember they were investing in intensification of agriculture in the United States and other developed countries, because that has the most tangible impact on protecting sensitive resources and habitats. And you never hear that conversation in agriculture. I get frustrated with the current thinking on carbon, these markets that were kind of early development. And I think there is long-term potential, but how do you quantify something that gets released back up? When I till that field eventually for another tangent, nobody will like this, but how we're able to do no-till farming where we don't release that carbon back into the atmosphere? It's through glyphosate. That is one of the main chemicals that enabled us to not have to till the field, to have that weed suppression. Is there other ways to do it? You better believe it there is. We're going to continue to develop some practices that make no-till farming and other carbon sequestration work, but the economics, I have not seen that pencil out yet for a lot of farmers. I think it's going to have a government subsidy base to it for the foreseeable future, but there's not an agreed upon standard. We had this conversation with a really neat group out of Europe that was looking at spending dollars here in the United States on kind of turnkey carbon sequestration projects. And it was exciting, but also the challenges of how do we agree upon what's an acceptable process and what is the dollar value? Do we go back in time and look at the farmers, somebody that's been doing something great for the last 10 years? Do you go back and make those payments? Do you set it in, going forward? Do we take land out of production? That's a way to sequester carbon, is to let it return to nature. Well, I would say in farming, we need this food, and it's a trade-off. And I don't think there's an easy way of putting this carbon conversation in a nice one-pager that everybody can agree upon. Anyway, it's a challenge, but I think it's the reality that we're going to have these conversations going forward.
Yeah, so, at the highest level, if we're not going to die from climate change, we're going to die from starvation, right? We've got two major problems. And the UN data says we need to increase agricultural production by 70% by 2050 to feed the global population. All right. Clearly, we have a climate change issue where we are experiencing really extreme weather events. And what is problematic with our planning in terms of climate change is that we are getting stuck in the minutia and we're failing to apply common sense. And beyond that, the modeling and the data is incredibly flawed. So let me go a little bit deeper into that, okay? So simply by existing, agriculture sequesters carbon. So here in San Diego County, we at the Farm Bureau have taken a very active stance in advocating for agriculture, because when you look at the data, we are not a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And when you look at a state level, we are not a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. When you look at the national level, we are also not a major contributor. And I am talking about converting methane emissions to CO2 equivalents. This dialogue that methane emissions in agriculture is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emission is applying international data to American agriculture. And it's driving us out of business, and it's creating additional greenhouse gas emissions, because when you import food, you are doing additional vehicle miles traveled, additional refrigeration, and additional packaging, all of which creates really excessive greenhouse gas emissions. So local production of agriculture is the best production of agriculture. And when you're planning for agriculture, it's very important to understand your proper baseline, right? They're modeling the baselines wrong. You need to understand your baseline is bare dirt with no plant on it. Simply by existing, that farmer takes a plant and takes care of that plant and maintains it for the life of that plant. And that sequesters carbon. None of this is captured in our long range planning for climate action. And what's happening is we're doing it wrong. The state of California literally has a policy that says you can't get credit for planting a tree. That's not allowed. You can get credit for putting mulch around a tree that already exists, but guys, the data shows we need to plant like 1 billion more trees to even make a dent in this, and to have a regulatory framework that my County of San Diego staff says we can't put planting trees as a climate action plan measure because the state of California hasn't approved it is insane. This is crazy, right? So we're holding space here at the Farm Bureau to try to apply common sense, right? Because we're an industry that is like a win-win on every level by encouraging us to exist rather than pushing us out of economic viability.
Yeah, no, good point. And to go back earlier on that, the Healthy Soils Program grant, the challenges we had is, yeah, we wanted to plant a lot more trees and use some of that, the money that we were allocated to invest in windbreaks, which are essential. This year, we've seen an increase. I don't have any statistics on this, but it just seems like the winds are much more intense, and windbreaks are essential for coffee cultivation. We need to protect them. They have shallow root systems, and they get very top heavy. Arabica tends to overbear, so you get a lot of cherries up top. And when you get hit by heavy winds with a shallow root structure, it's not the best. It's actually horrible. So that kind of goes into the next question. Jerry Brown, former governor of California, was quoted with saying, abnormal is the new normal when it comes to climate change. And in some of the meetings that I've sat in on with the predictions for the future is, it's not necessarily just this, general warming, which is happening, but we're just experiencing higher highs and lower lows, more extreme high temperatures and more extreme low temperatures, stronger winds. The rains are going to be consolidated into shorter periods of time rather than, I don't see how we really spread out our rains very much, but we'll get more at once. And actually flooding kind of blew my mind. That was like one of the biggest potential hazards coming that state planners were saying that we need to really focus on, because, like what happened in Montecito, this flooding is a very big problem. So what are farm bureaus doing, or what are kind of regional players doing in order to kind of help growers prepare for these extreme challenges? And Yeah, again, one of the things that I noticed through this session is that our bureaus need a lot more support. I did invite representatives from the Santa Barbara Bureau and the LA Bureau, and they just didn't have the time to come in here and sit and have this chat. So they were understaffed. They said it's one or two people around the office. So I think, if anything, I would like to send the message to provide more support for your organizations. And I'm not looking to say you guys need to take care of all of these intense challenges. Just want to hear your thoughts on it. So hopefully that
Sure.
made sense.
It does. And some of this work, that you'll see the results way down the pipeline starts many years before that at a budget committee hearing with California Farm Bureau sitting at a table with a room full of lobbyists trying to fight our way for funding. And so UC Cooperative Extension, we had some luck last year getting a lot of funding restored that had been kind of dwindled over the years. We see some positives on that, but in general, long term in this country, we're not making investments in agriculture. The international research is growing, and the U.S. based research is declining. We're kind of lost that value, I think, of the American people of making public investments in agriculture research, the development of new seeds, technologies. A lot of that's gone private to global companies, and that's because the government funding wasn't there, and you're fighting for a talent pool of scientists and plant breeders and developers and veterinarians and livestock folks. And we have to make sure that American agriculture still is supported by our government at that fundamental level. We can go back to the Dust Bowl. That was before we had the Soil Conservation Service. It took a crisis to wake us up to what was happening. And, starting out at the funding level, that's where Farm Bureau is at, fighting for those dollars. Here at the local level, we're not doing research ourselves, but we're very much connecting our farmer members to programs and demonstration farms, to webinars, to trainings, to make sure they know what the best practices are. And I think we have one of the most innovative farm economies in the world here. And you better believe it, we're interested in trying new things to mitigate this climate change reality. And I don't hear it debated here. I heard that a lot in Kentucky, but I do not hear that climate change denial in any way, shape, or form, because we see it. We see it every day, and it's more rapid than I think maybe other parts of the country realize. We're going to have these extremes. How are our kids going to deal with it? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm afraid I'm always a pessimist. Farmers are optimists, but Farm Bureau, I'm always pessimistic. We're around these regulations and these difficult situations all day. But I fear we're not going to make these investments in agriculture research, and I fear that other countries will surpass us. And right now, we're the leading ag economy in the world, but I don't know that the same thing will be said a generation from now.
Yeah, Ben, I would like to say thank you for elevating the need to support the farming community and the farm bureaus, because you cannot argue the fact that agriculture is in crisis in the state of California. It's shown in the data. When you look at the last 10 years of crop reports in the state of California, we've lost 500,000 acres of production agriculture. When you look at 10 years in San Diego County, 26% of all production agriculture has been lost in a decade. And so this is a huge carbon sequestration existence that is gone now. So we're exacerbating the climate crisis and not mentioning our food security issue on top of that by not supporting agriculture. And then we have the climate crisis, the real life problems of climate crisis. Like, I'm looking at my old Farmer's Almanac this year. I think it said, I forget if it was January 28th or February 28th, it said plant after the first frost. Well, guess what, guys? It's still frosted in San Diego right now, right? We have really extreme winds. We've got really unpredictable droughts. We've got heat waves that scorch us. These extreme weather events, you cannot argue that they are extremely problematic. So again, the space the Farm Bureau holds is, number one, educating the public and our policymakers of the importance to ensure agriculture exists as a viable industry in the long run, because quite frankly, we can be that solution to climate change, right? From like the most weird off the wall projects. I mean, like Switzerland for decades has machines that have been pulling carbon out of the air and making bricks, right? And those can be used as inputs for farming community. And let's plant some trees on top of that, right? We can stabilize our microclimate, but this regulatory framework is not based on logic or rational thought anymore. It's based on politics and money. And that's driving this weird agenda. So it's important that we re-educate not only the consumer about where food comes from and why it's important and why California is the most environmentally friendly, we're also educating our policymakers. And then beyond that, we're taking this industry that's suffering and collapsing. And the Farm Bureaus, the space we hold is as the lifeline. We try to connect them to the resources that they need to survive and thrive. And in the space of climate change right now, a lot of that, unfortunately, is grant funding to survive these events, right? USDA has wind loss programs. It's got heat stroke programs, not stroke, heat, whatever. Heat burn, everything with heat that makes everything fall off the tree and you not be able to harvest that. It's got drought programs, real financial assistance that actually helps you offset that loss of production, right? So then our farmer can maintain economic viability. And we're so thankful for those programs. They are the lifeline that are needed, but that's not the solution to this long-term problem, right? We need to reset the system to help make people understand agriculture is a viable career path, and it's an incredibly important career path. So, yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that wonderful answer. And I think we'll kind of wrap it up there in terms of questions, unless, anyone has any additional questions that they would like to propose. I want to encourage everyone who watches this to become a member of your local Farm Bureau and support their efforts. Obviously, their work is meant to benefit you and help out everyone in our society. And I thank you both for your commitment and public service in this important domain. And just, is there any kind of final messages that you might like to say that maybe I didn't give space for?
Well, I'll just say farming is probably the most rewarding industry that you can be involved in. It's therapeutic for your mind, your body, your soul. It's super rewarding. It gives you a different perspective on life. So in an age where we are experiencing a significant collapse in agriculture, there is nothing more important than getting into the game and giving it your all. And that's what we're here at the Farm Bureaus to help you get through it and help you be successful. So, there's some doomsday stuff out there, but together, collectively, we can work together and make a big difference and a really positive impact to better humanity and the earth in the long run.
I just want to say thank you for having us, and we look forward to seeing some coffee in San Luis Obispo County. That's awesome and exciting. And if there's anything, people listening to this later, please reach out. There's no stupid question. We're happy to help. If we don't know, we'll connect you with someone who does. And we value this $2.5 billion SLO County ag economy, and it needs new players, need new ideas. And so we're kind of been around this a while, been in agriculture my whole life, but I always appreciate people asking questions and getting involved. There's no stupid question. And if you lined up all of our members and asked them, what their thoughts are on a given policy issue, we have a lot of diversity, a lot of different thoughts, and that's okay. What makes us Farm Bureau strong is we have those debates, we have those discussions, and we're mindful about what can we do to stay around and stay viable in California. And I think with good advocacy and good policy and people getting involved, we can. If anybody has any questions, they can visit our website, slofarmbureau.org, get my contact information, and glad to be a part of this. Thank you, Hannah and Ben, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you. And just, one last point, just to plant a little seed with you. Columbia University put out a study that said by 2050, 75% of the land that's currently being used for coffee production is no longer going to be viable for coffee cultivation. And one of the things that a lot of small farmers in coffee producing countries, their children don't want to get into coffee, because they've seen their parents suffer so much in trying to work with cultivating coffee for such low return on investment. So I think a lot of youth would rather work in a call center answering calls in a metropolitan area in an air-conditioned environment with a stable income than they would take the risk at agriculture. and with the challenges that are coming. So that being said, that we also have a predicted 50% increase in the demand for coffee globally over the same period. So 75% reduction in global supply mixed with a 50% increase in demand for specialty grade coffee. And that's primarily fueled by China's participation in the specialty coffee market. They weren't big buyers of coffee in the past. So for those reasons, I really do think that, well, I know that there is a really great market out there for Californians if they are in the right environment and have the right resources in order to invest in coffee. And San Diego, San Luis Obispo, Ventura, and Santa Barbara counties are where we're working right now. And yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And Hannah, you don't have it. Do you have anything else?
No, just thanks for your time. And certainly, coffee growing is a really smart commodity to grow because it is one of the highest values. And I mean, I cannot live without coffee personally. I pick coffee over food pretty much every day of the week. So that's what you need to do when you are modeling your business, and planning for the future, making sure you're doing the highest value commodity with a really great future. Friends, you guys are amazing. Thank you for helping support all of our farmers in the emerging economy in that space.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Well, I'm going to close it up.